Why the EU Mercosur free trade agreement is not happening. My name is Gerald Sommer. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Nomad Elite, and I'm joined here by Enzo Melgarejo, our research and development specialist at Nomad Elite. So we wanted to talk about why this trade agreement is not happening and how it is actually bad for the European Union because it will only inflate prices more than before. Now, please talk to us about where you see this trade agreement go. But first of all, explain why it is not happening, because there were expectations that are not being fulfilled. So why is this trade agreement not happening?
Okay, so to put into context, this is a trade agreement between the two largest common economic blocks there are. For in one side, the European Union, and on the other side, the Common Market of the South, or Mercosur. It has been in talks for over 25 years, and there are still disagreements, particularly in the green policies areas. So what does this free trade agreement entail? Well, for once, 92% of all South American goods that are currently being exported to Europe will have a 0% tariff, and 92% of all European products that are coming to Mercosur will also have a 0% tariff. So what this means in practice is that agricultural products coming out of Mercosur and going to Europe will have no tariff, and industrial products like cars, pharmaceutical, medicines, and other type of technologies will have no tariffs for the importation into Mercosur countries. Well, so where is the problem, right? Well, the problem arises when you have European farmers unable to compete. European farmers, as most people know, they have very, very strict regulations. We're talking about environmental regulations, carbon emission regulations, sustainability regulations, pesticide, hormones, you name it. There's too many regulations for European farmers, and on the other part, Mercosur farmers do not face the same regulations. Another very important point is that Mercosur farmers, the farming here is just on another scale. I mean, we have farms here that can be 250,000 hectares. So that's the size of a French department. So we are talking about another scale of production. And of course, when you combine all these factors, what you end up with is that Mercosur products are way cheaper compared to the European counterparts. So that's when you see like European farmers protesting in France. They are also protesting in the Netherlands, in Poland, and in Spain. So there will be resistance to this trade deal, particularly from Macron himself. He already stated that he will not sign the Mercosur trade deal as it stands now. Today, Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, met with the 5 presidents of Mercosur: Lula, Milei, Luis Lacalle Pou, the president of Uruguay, and Santiago Peña, the president of Paraguay, and we also with the president of Bolivia. And they closed the agreement. They signed the agreement. Now it has to be ratified by the European Union member countries. But if I'm not mistaken, there is a trickery up at the European Commission sleeve. So apparently, according to European Union law, with these types of agreements, they only need approval from the European Parliament. And we will see how this ends up. My estimation is that this will not pass. It will have to be renegotiated, but some experts are already saying the opposite. We will see how this develops, and yeah.
You addressed before, when we talked about this privately, how everything in Paraguay is cheaper. Water is cheaper. Electricity is cheaper. Everything's cheaper. Labor is a fraction of what it costs in Europe. Talk to us about the benefits that European Union citizens and perhaps also residents in Europe are going to get out of this. Do you see any benefits there at all? I mean, you talked to me about how food prices may actually decrease in the European Union as a result of this free trade agreement, the EU Mercosur free trade agreement not happening.
One way the European Union will benefit is that their products, we're talking about the automobile industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the technologies industry, the finance industry, will now be able to participate in the Mercosur market, which is a market of over 280 million people. So it's no small market. And they will be able to participate without any sort of tariff at 0%. So as if they were a local enterprise, which will benefit them and will give them economic growth. But again, it helps some sectors of the European economy, but it hurts others. Same thing with the Mercosur side. It helps the agricultural sector, but it hurts the own Mercosur pharmaceutical sector, the own Mercosur technological sector, and also the small, very, very small sector here. The automobile sector is going to be really hurt, but it's still very small sector. So yeah, it will be. It's a we will see case. We will see if who ends up taking the most out of this deal. In my opinion, I think that Europe really needs this deal politically, geopolitically, to be correct. We have the two main powers, United States and China, each going their own way. China with the BRICS, the United States with its hegemony on the dollar, and now with a second term of Donald Trump, we can see that tariffs are going to start flying around everywhere. As you may know, Donald Trump has already threatened tariffs to almost all allies and enemy nations. So I see this deal as Europe looking for stability in a common friend, a friend that shares the same values, that is the Mercosur, that shares the same values in democracy, free trade, multilateralism, and the rule of law. Yeah, so it's Europe really needs this, I think, to find stability and tranquility between the dragon, the Chinese dragon, and the American hawk. You know?
Europe is already struggling a lot after the war in Ukraine. Energy prices have increased a lot. And just talking about my own family who recently relocated from Austria to Spain, it happened during the war, since the war started. And one of the biggest arguments that my parents made was that it's just unaffordable to keep the house warm. Whereas before it was a lot more affordable, but now it's not anymore. And my parents moved from Austria to southern Spain, actually the Canary Islands, where everything is much cheaper.
Yes.
It's not as cheap as Paraguay, but it's a lot more affordable. Given the whole trajectory that Europe is in, not much positive things are happening in Europe these days. And I think the next 5 years is going to be incrementally more control in a lot of areas. Surveillance, the digital IDs. Yeah. That are now more prevalent than ever. I've spoken to another UK client about how every store in the UK is so surveilled these days. And that's just the beginning. The CBDCs that are about to happen are nothing compared to what we're going through right now. And people don't see that. I don't see this happening in Paraguay, where the government will step in and control your spending, which is what the central bank digital currency will be used for a good part. And they don't admit to that. But there have been a lot of updates on the European Union side where they first said, no, we're not going to control everything and anything. And then they can admit it. Well, there's going to be some control. There's going to be some peaking, So they kind of reverted that statement. They kind of revised the statement they initially made. So out of all the continents there are, and given the fact that I'm a native European Union citizen myself, it's the continent that I'm least optimistic about in this decade. It's true. I have more optimism for Asia, for Africa, for here even. There's just more meat on the bone. In Europe, there is not much meat on the bone left. And I would say since 2019, every year has shown progress in the wrong direction. It really has, and it's depressing to witness as someone who has lived in the European Union for a long time, who was born there, raised there, and I literally was able to spot and as well experience the incremental changes to the downside, where I would say the 90s were probably the best time in recorded history, and maybe 2019 was the ultimate peak of European civilization. You know what I mean? Whereas now it's like, is it going to get worse than it already is? And it seems like a lot of things are going from bad to worse. And I think the biggest deciding factor is that the people don't believe that this is happening. Yeah. Whereas in other countries I've been to, people are more switched on. In Europe, I don't see that happening, where the people have so much trust in the establishment. Yeah. In Asia, people are very skeptical about the governments. Why? It's communism, for instance, right? Here, people are skeptical because they know, there's a lot of corruption everywhere, right? So you're aware of that. But it's funny how in Europe, people think that there's no corruption at all.
Yeah, that everything is fine.
That everything is fine. And that's the kiss of death. You can never think that. You always have to question to find the answers to your question. If you don't question, lost. So I'm sorry to say I don't feel very positive. And also speaking to people locally in Europe, in different countries, in Spain, in Austria, I don't see the people are waking up. And in my opinion, you only have two options in life, and you make that choice. You're either asleep or you're awake. There's almost nothing in between. And I'm sorry to say that Europeans are asleep.
Yeah, it's definitely that is definitely true.
Except for the farmers, of course, they know what's going on, and they're being heard the most. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to pass on?
Yeah, I think Europe is right now in a position where they cannot do anything about it, which is sad. They have overregulated their economy too much, and now the effect is clearly visible. We have their main allies, the United States, now with Donald Trump second term. He's already testing the idea of introducing new tariffs to the Europeans. So we have China as well, increasingly distancing itself from Western nations, and then Europe finds itself alone. Trump already said that he's against the war in Ukraine and he's looking for a quick way out. Let's see how that develops. Surely the American interest always has some weight on the international agenda. Europe finds itself in a difficult position. All its allies basically abandoned it. The UK is not in the European Union anymore. The EU is as it has never been before. So now they need that friend and they find that friend in Mercosur through this free trade agreement. But again, there's still much public opposition to this, which is understandable. Europe regulates itself but decides to export from countries that do not have that same local regulation, which is a paradox in itself. But yeah, Europe is in a difficult position. Now the farming industry is going to be badly hurt. We will have to wait and see if the benefits outweigh the negatives.
Thank you for watching Nomad Elite. If you're interested in more content on Mercosur and Europe, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we see you on the next video.